Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is Brokenhead Ojibway Nation Chief Gordon Bluesky. Bluesky was elected chief of the First Nation just north of Winnipeg in April 2022. He's a 60 scoop survivor who grew up in the United States before returning and reconnecting with his nation and culture. Bluesky is also the chairperson of Treaty 1 Nations, Inc., which is overseeing the development of the largest urban reserve in Canada. Chief Bluesky, great pleasure to have you with us this week.
Miigwech, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
I had the pleasure of catching your speech this past summer at the Indigenous Journalists Association and found it quite striking and also uplifting. And as we mentioned in the intro there, you are a 60s scoop survivor and ended up in the United States, right?
That's correct. I started, I guess, my journey as a 60 scoop survivor when I was about 2 years old, when I was apprehended from my community of Brokenhead. Initially was brought to the city of Winnipeg, which I ended up being in foster care for a few years. Some of those years were with my sisters, and there was also a separation of my sisters at that time. And then ultimately we were all three adopted to a little town outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
You were all together then?
We were fortunate enough, and I always give thanks to the Creator and our ancestors for allowing me to be adopted with my sisters. It really did keep us together, and we're still pretty tight.
Nice. Yeah. And that led you, I guess, moving there to serving in the U.S. military as well.
Yes, I was in the U.S. Navy, and shortly thereafter, I got a call from my youngest sister, and she had told me that our mother, our birth mother, had made contact, and shortly thereafter made my way back to Canada and ultimately back to Brokenhead.
Can you tell us, I guess, a bit about that journey home to Canada and connecting with your land, your culture, and your community?
Yes, it was quite the experience. It's a bit of a culture shock. It was I got the shock going down there, and I also got the shock coming home. 1995, I ultimately made my way home with my younger sister Denise, and we drove back from Pennsylvania. Again, a bit naive. I wasn't aware of the extreme weather that we were driving into. It was in December of 1995 that I ultimately drove back with her to Winnipeg and then ultimately to Brokenhead. At that time, I didn't even know why people were plugging in their cars. I had no clue what they were doing. I actually thought it was like charging their battery or something. But yeah, it was a bit of a interesting first introduction, But when I first came, and that was when we were driving back to ultimately staying where I stayed in Brokenhead from that point on, initially. But before that, in the summer of '95, I had come up here from the military and flew into Minneapolis, where I was supposed to meet my sisters from Pittsburgh, and then all three were supposed to fly north to Winnipeg and then ultimately to my mother's house. My sisters unfortunately missed their flight, and I ended up making that journey by myself, which started off really, I don't know, it was really intense, because my mother picked me up with my stepdad, Wilford, and we drove back to Brokenhead, and, I was really nervous. And I spent a lot of time downstairs in the washroom. I went downstairs immediately and showered. And it was this, I guess I was hiding. But ultimately there was a bunch of people upstairs waiting for me to come upstairs. This moment was meant to be with my sisters, and I ended up going upstairs on my own. But it was the most amazing moment as well, because I walked into a room full of people that looked like me, that were my relatives, that were my blood. And I've never experienced that in my life other than with my sisters, and I'll always remember that moment for the rest of my life. I also found at that moment that I had two younger sisters, and at that time they were only 2 and 4 years old. Oh. And that was amazing. I pretty much started crying at that point because I had no clue they even existed.
I guess, was this all part of the reason that you decided to stay?
Well, it's you know, there's a lot of reasons. You know, I can't really pick one reason why I stayed. Number one, I didn't know what I was if I was to go back to America, I didn't know what I was going there for. But I just felt this. There's something inside of us as Indigenous people, I believe, that is like a GPS, like something that lures or attracts you back. And I give a lot of credit to my grandmothers. And how I honestly believe, for whatever reason, again, I can't explain this, I believe that it was that natural spiritual thing that brought me back home. And from that point, whenever I did come into Brokenhead and started to live there and started to learn my cultural, learn my language, meet new people, make new friends, ultimately went to university there shortly thereafter, I basically just moved, I went all in Brokenhead, and it was just our people, our ways, our language. There's no other place on earth I feel this comfortable other than among my people.
Now, saying all that, I guess, did you ever think that you would end up being a chief of the nation?
You know, it's a funny thing, because when I look back on it, one of the first things I said, and I don't recall exactly when, but I know a lot of my family, my friends say that I said it wasn't too long after I came here. I said, I want to be chief here one day. And that was, 27 years ago. And here we are in my first term as chief of our community. It's an honor. I love my community. I love my people. I do my best to represent them respectfully. And it's, again, there's nothing, I don't know where I go from here in life, because I've achieved probably one of the greatest things I'll ever achieve.
A little more than a year and a half into acting as chief, how have things gone for you so far?
Well, it's been challenging. Being a chief of a community, a leader in a community where our members are dealing with a lot of trauma, historical legacies that have been carrying over from things like the residential school, the 60 scoop. There's a lot of dependency that's been created through those structures. There's a lot of issues that I believe that currently our medical systems and health facilities don't know how to accommodate. And we're coming out of this stage and we're starting to have more resources available to us to where we can start that journey of healing. And for myself, that's one of the main things that I had to do. And one of the main things that I promote any opportunity I can with our young people, with members of our community, is that we have to deal with that trauma. I was taken from my community that I don't remember. I have a faint memory, I believe, of my grandmother. But ultimately, when I started to remember things, it was trauma. It was scared. It was sadness. It was, dark things that I don't even want to talk about. But it was things that I remember, and that was my earliest childhood memories. And I know a lot of our people share the experiences that I have. And so we have to work our way through that. And those are the things that I've been doing through this job as well, is not only having to deal with, a lot of issues communally that we're facing, but also trying to work with people individually as well, and try to give them some sort of direction on things that I've done to help at least get myself to a place where I don't allow that trauma to dictate what I do in my life.
Like you say, this is a big issue. How did you help work through your own?
Well, it wasn't too long ago. I think I'm on 6 years now, stage 4 cancer survivor as well. And I really do believe, and I've been kind of taught as well, that sometimes our trauma, if we don't release it, it stays within our body. And if we leave it in our body for too long, sometimes it can manifest into sickness, disease. And I honestly believe now that I look back on it, that I'm one of those people that allowed for it to stay in there, because I put up this hard exterior. I wasn't, going to be pushed around anymore. I wasn't going to be, traumatized anymore. And I would live my life like that for a long time, and I wasn't looking inside here. So I had to battle with my addictions, my drug use. And it was about just shortly after or just before I got diagnosed with cancer, just about 6 months before that, I took my last drink and I did my last drugs, and I asked for help, and I went into a treatment center. And I'm now 7 years sober, But through that time that I knew that it was, once I released the alcohol, like the addiction, like the dependency that I had to start dealing with my problems, and I had to start to look inside and start to deal with the issues that I was ignoring and that I was coping, really bad habits that I was coping with, dealing with that. And it was that time that I started to look in, and it was, and quit being the hard gourd, and started saying, okay, now I have to face these issues. I have to look at these things, and I have to feel my emotions, and I have to understand what my emotions are. And sometimes that's screaming. Sometimes that's you know, it's getting it out of your body. You know, sometimes it's not always just sadness or anger. It's also excitement. And a lot of times I would hold those in ever since I was a little boy, being scared in a place that I never even knew. I would cry and nobody would come. So all that stuff got locked in me. And that's the stuff that we have to move as people. That's the stuff that we have to release. So there's a very, you know, we're fortunate that we live in a time where we're allowed to practice our ways openly. Those are the things that I do now. I got very strong healers that I work with. One of the groups, the Three Windies, have been very key in helping me to identify issues that I have internally and start to work those things out. And it takes ceremony and it takes work that you have to do to allow for those things to not be inside of you anymore. So there's stuff that I had that I remember. It's sometimes it's a smell, sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's different kind of lights, it's a voice that triggers. Now a lot of those things I've released and they don't bother me anymore. Some of those things that used to bother me would have me reach for an alcohol or drug or something like that. But now those things don't bother me. It's an amazing thing once you actually go through it.
Great stuff, Chief. Much more for us to talk about here. We just got to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here with Chief Bluesky. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Brokenhead Ojibway Nation Chief Gordon Bluesky. And Chief Bluesky, before the break, we were kind of talking about your journey home, I guess, leading up to your role in leadership here now. And prior to becoming chief, a lot of your work was around treaty and land rights, land resources. Why, I guess, the focus so much on that for yourself?
Well, you know, it's been a long journey. When I first started university, I ended up finding a course that was called Center for Indigenous Environmental Resources, Environmental Education Training Program. From that point, I got to meet a lot of people from across Canada, different nations, different individuals that were going there for school. Really inspired me. The instructors it was a unique training facility. It was Indigenous and Western teachers and educators that came together to really give us a strong core understanding of our role and our people even. So it was really interesting because sometimes it was like, and a lot of us, these are the first times we get introduced to cultural and a lot of these other things. So from that point on, I ended up graduating from that program, which was certified through the University of Manitoba. And shortly thereafter, I went to do an international internship in Hauraki, in Auckland, New Zealand with the Maori. And I spent 6 months over there. And I give thanks to them. There was one of my friends just most recently just passed away. It's unfortunate. I've never seen him again, but we kept in steady contact. His name was James Brown. And he just, him and his people, the people of Hauraki, really started a fire inside of me about environmental protection and stewardship, and really started my path toward the work that I was doing. At that time, I ended up getting a position with the Treaty Land Entitlement Committee as an implementation officer, and also as what I would call a treaty implementer, and got to work with all of our communities, and ultimately ended up working with Brokenhead as one of my First Nations. We were working with about 5 or 6 as implementation officers at that time. And shortly thereafter, taking on that position, I was approached by some of the leadership that I actually get to sit with today in leadership as part of my council. They approached me and asked me to apply for the job in Brokenhead as the lands manager. And I guess what you can say, the rest is history. You know, it's just been a passion of mine. It's been a passion of mine in terms of not only treaty implementation, but land reclamation. And it's a really powerful thing whenever you have the opportunity to bring even just a small piece of land back to your people. Your people really acknowledge that and are proud of you and really support you when you do stuff like that. So I know for me, it's just been it's been a great career, and I look back on it and I'm pretty amazed at the opportunities that I've had.
Well, all that education, those teachings and learnings are all coming to the forefront now as you're, the chairperson of Treaty 1, a group that represents Treaty 1 First Nations in Manitoba, that's working on the largest urban reserve in Canada. Can you tell us a bit about, this huge opportunity and what's on the horizon here with what formerly was known as Kapion Barracks, but now known as Nawai Udina?
Yeah, it's one of our, I guess for me, I'm really excited about the opportunities that Nawai Udina actually does provide for our First Nations, and not just for our Treaty 1 or 7 communities, but also just First Nations people in general. Prior to my being asked to come back down, because I was in northern Manitoba working for the Fox Lake Cree Nation, before I was asked to come back down here, I was working with them. And I had to approach them and say, hey, I got to go back down south and work with my people in terms of the former Kapion Barracks. And one of my directors at that time came and sat me down and he says, you know what, we really need you to be successful. All of us need you to be successful. So we have no issue. We understand that your people are calling you back home and start to work on this project. So at that time, I knew that there was a lot that we had on the plate. And for whatever reason in my life, I've always been tasked with these impossible jobs. And at that time, the former Kapion Barracks, turning it to reserve, and even from my beginnings at the Treaty Land Entitlement Committee and working on that when it first went into dispute in 2002, 2004, and then ultimately working for my First Nation, I'm fortunate enough as a leader to see that whole process go full circle. Mm-hmm. Some of our leaders from Brokenhead specifically, and I know other communities as well, have actually passed away during this time period. It was about a 20-year battle that we went through. Yeah. So it's not only so much that it's meaningful from that perspective, because we're implementing treaty, we're implementing the vision of my previous leaders as well, but it's also the opportunity, because this opportunity has not been seen, and there's nothing larger than this opportunity across Canada. So for me, it's very exciting. We have our communities right now working together to really start to set the stage, develop our lands management regime. We got a master plan. A lot of the communications of Winnipeggers themselves. Every time I go anywhere and we have an opportunity to speak about Nawai Udina, it's not just Indigenous people that are pulling for us. Mm-hmm. Canadians, Manitobans, Winnipeggers are behind us as well. So I'm really excited to see what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is not just big for Treaty 1 and all First Nations in this province, but really the entire province itself. Mm-hmm. Once in a lifetime opportunity here.
Yeah, it's been it was last December that it formally got turned to reserve status, joint reserve status of all 7 of our First Nations. And at that time, it was a bit of a magical situation, because it was all these things kind of fell into place. And I've lived a life where there's been a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of things a lot of hurdles I had to jump over, and all this stuff. But I'm grateful as well, because today I feel like a lot of these things are coming into alignment. And maybe that's why I lived the life that I did, was to come back and do the work that I'm doing right now. Right from the previous mayor, Brian Bowman, working with him to develop the Master Municipal Development Services Agreement for our site, and then advancing it to reserve creation, and now working with the current mayor, Mayor Gillingham, and advancing and continuing with that work. It's just been amazing. The people that we have as staff within our organization as well have been working tirelessly to get the right information out to support our communities and making informed decisions right now on the lands management regime. So it's a lot of work, I guess, behind the scenes. I get to be the guy that comes out here and kind of stands in front of the podium and take a lot of the limelight, but there's a lot of work from our Treaty 1 staff, which is staffed by, I think we're at about 95, 98% Treaty 1 people. So it really is truly a Treaty 1 initiative.
Chief, construction was initially slated to begin sometime this fall. Are we still going to see some movement there?
My understanding, and I would assume APTN will be there, We're a couple weeks away from having some of our first infrastructure going into the ground. People, I don't want to take away too much of the surprise there, but it'll be happening at our what we call Block A, the north side of Taylor and Kenniston. That one little property there, that's where we're starting off. And again, it's just going to be a kickstart to our economic engines and really get our communities not only working, generating much needed revenue, but also just pride. You know, and I've been explaining this to the city of Winnipeg and other groups, saying that, you know, we want to see relationships starting to build here. We want to see internships that are with different companies. We want to see internships for policing of this property and other things. I got family members that work at the city of Winnipeg that now can work at Nawi-Odina. It's an amazing opportunity. I can't wait to see it. Actually, you know, they figured about a 15, 20-year build out, and I'm hoping to see it all the way through that. But it's just going to be something I think we can all be proud of as Manitobans, Winnipeggers, and Canadians.
Exciting stuff for sure. Chief Bluesky, we just need to step aside for one more quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Gordon Bluesky, the chief of Brokenhead Ojibway Nation in Manitoba. And Chief Bluesky, it's really a historic week here in Manitoba, as we'll be swearing in the first First Nations premier of a province in Canada with Wabkanu's recent election. What were your thoughts and what are your hopes, I guess, for this incoming provincial government here?
I'm just going to again give thanks to the time that I was ability to be born in, to be able to see these things. A friend like Wabkanu making it this historic step into politics, but also making a historic, just in general, his step into being premier of our Manitoba. I'm really excited about what this means for our communities. I know a lot of his candidates and a lot of people that are part of his party are Indigenous and First Nation as well. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing a First Nation Indigenous cabinet being announced tomorrow. And I think it's just amazing. I wish Wab all the best in terms of his journey going into this. But we also, as Indigenous people, we have to take time to say prayers for him. You know, because he is walking into an environment and an element that we're at the end of the day, it's foreign to us. And so we got to make sure that we also give him that as well. But I'm really excited for the opportunities that presents for our Nawi-Odina as well, because again, we need a support, we need political allies to be supporting the work that we're doing at the Nawi-Odina. And I believe Wab and his current party and the people that are involved with this party, and hopefully the cabinet that we're going to be hearing about being announced tomorrow, is going to be in tune with the work that we have over there in Nawi-Odina.
Well, Chief Bluesky, a real pleasure to have you on the show and for you to share some of your journey with us. Thanks so much for doing the show and for doing that with us.
I appreciate it, and I'd just like to say hello to all my Brokenhead band members out there and our Treaty 1 members as well. Miigwech. Thank you.
That is all the time we have for this week's show. You can catch up on any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca, or visiting the APTN News YouTube page. Of course, this episode and all of our previous episodes are also available as podcasts. You can find those wherever you download your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here in 7 days.